Now take money. It's been the ultimate honeypot all of history, because if you control money, you control everybody else. We've never lived in a global free market where you could trade with people all over without an intermediary. And the output of that trade was deflation. And if all of your trade is in that system and you are not self-custodying, not running an economic node and all of these trade, then that system will stop Bitcoin in time, because not enough trade. So the little tiny fees from Lightning and such that then move down to the miners. So you are an active participant. We trade with each other to achieve more value. That's what the global free market looks like. So if you're going to distort that and stop that from happening through your financial instrument, there's going to be consequences. All of those people become the network. And when I say we are Bitcoin, we are that social layer of Bitcoin is the thing that keeps it decentralized and secure.
Hi, Jeff. Welcome back on the show.
Hey, Robin. Great to see you.
Thank you so much for coming back on. It was so great. You were my first big guest, and it's almost an emotional moment for me, because it's like 400 episodes between the first one and now you. So thank you so much for doing that. It's really cool.
Well, huge congrats on what you're doing.
Thank you so much. I know often when you talk, I hear and I often notice that you say we are Bitcoin very often. And I think it's a really interesting topic, the social revolution behind Bitcoin. What do you mean by we are Bitcoin?
That's a pretty deep topic. And for Bitcoiners who have spent a lot of time here, they'll know what I mean. But when you actively participate, run a node, spend in Bitcoin, you are the social layer that actually keeps that decentralized and secure. So when I watch the world centralizing and measuring Bitcoin and fiat and all of these things and all of these risks that they think about about Bitcoin, when the risk is really about them, what are they going to do? Because nobody can force you, because Bitcoin is decentralized and secure in the way that nodes are set up. You can actively participate in the honest system and expand the honest system with what you do, with what you choose to do. So I like to say that Bitcoin, understanding Bitcoin, or once you understand Bitcoin, if you choose the other system, it doesn't say anything about Bitcoin. It says something about you. And once you make that choice, and once you commit to that choice, like you're doing, like there's you know all of the people. I could name them for it would take me all this podcast to name all the people that are, whether Michael Saylor calls them cyber hornets, all of the fights and or a bunch of the fights about Bitcoin are in order to keep its essence, that we are it. This is the first time in human history that we've had a chance to have something decentralized and secure. And in other words, not live in an exploitive system, live in a competitive one, but cooperative for all of humanity. And it's such a big deal that I understand when I'm saying this. The vast majority of the world doesn't understand what I'm saying and will push back, because there's a fear and their existing cognitive dissonance of what this is, what this state change looks like. But once you do understand it, you can be an active participant. That active participant in the network is the same thing that through the nodes, through the economic nodes, through the looking for attack vectors and being in front of those attack vectors way before they even happen. And building kind of freedom tech. All of those people, what you're doing, teaching other people, starting their journey down, all of those people become the network. And when I say we are Bitcoin, we are that social layer of Bitcoin is the thing that keeps it decentralized and secure.
So super interesting. Is that social layer the biggest and the most important part of Bitcoin, which keeps it different from any other crypto asset, any other stock, any other real estate, like any other asset, basically?
You could say lots of. I'd get caught in a trap because other people would say, "Well, the social layer of Twitter or the social layer of this." What is different here is because of the you know this, many of your viewers do, some of your viewers might not, because of the way the mining is set up for rewards, and then how you can run a node and audit that system and hold them accountable for the open source software that you download, and you can check everything, and you can hold them accountable and audit that time chain every 10 minutes. And then you can spend in it, and you can increase the kind of economic nodes that are driving it in this. All of those things make you an active participant or not. If you buy Bitcoin on an exchange, and I'm not throwing sand or darkness or shade at somebody else that is doing that, because that might be their first step into the journey. But if you're buying it on an exchange and you're measuring it in US dollars, you're measuring Bitcoin from the system that's centralizing. So you're giving your power to the centralization, because, and you know, I've talked about this lots before, but if the natural state of the free market is deflation, then all prices should fall forever. Anything that's stuck, anything that creates extra margin, anything that feels like isn't abundant, will create a swarm of entrepreneurs attacking it with different ideas because of the margin opportunity. So there can't be any monopoly in a free market. Can't look like all of the view of people's world today is a reflection of the system we live in. And what a lot of people are scared of in Bitcoin is it just repeats that system, but it can't, as long as it stays decentralized and secure. When I say we are Bitcoin, once you understand that, you're never going, once you really understand that, I don't know very many people who've really understood this and then made a choice to go back to the dishonest system. And because that's what it would have to do. That's what I would have to do. I am not going back, no matter what. This is, and I know many people that aren't. And so on one side, people would say, well, what if Bitcoin goes to zero? Okay, then it goes to zero. But the only way it could go to zero is if everyone chose to go back. So let's talk about some real potential risks to Bitcoin. And I would say that there's two major risks to Bitcoin that both of what I'm saying here solve. One would be quantum. At some point, you could say quantum is never going to happen, and that might be true, but I would say that that's more of an edge case now. That at some point, whether through what Microsoft's doing with hardware to be able to make and then software, we will likely get to quantum. Might be 10 years, might be 5 years, might be 20 years, might be never. But I think in something that's this profound, we should take the case that we will get there someday, and we should do the work to be able to make the protocol quantum resistant. How do you make the protocol quantum resistant? A whole bunch of people do the work to make sure the best solution is done, and that solution is fought with all of these people going through this consensus mechanism, and then you roll out a change. And who rolls out the change? The people that vote for the change that's in best interest of Bitcoin, the social layer. And we're doing at Ego Death, we're doing a lot of work on this right now, looking at all of the various different proposals. So you see, okay, there's a risk way out here, right? What should we actively participate in making sure that risk doesn't materialize? You can imagine there's a whole bunch of other people, not just Ego Death, a whole bunch of individuals, same as us, because of the social layer, that are doing the very same thing. What's another risk? Another risk is us. The risk is most people are measuring Bitcoin in the fiat instrument. And if they're measuring Bitcoin in the fiat instrument, they're actually contributing to the centralization. And they don't realize it, and they will get rich because Bitcoin will go up a lot in the fiat instrument. And they will probably trade their Bitcoin for the fiat instrument, and they will likely not run nodes. They will likely not be part of this. And at some point, that fiat system, which is an inflationary system, has to attack the honest one. Has to. So you could just go through a thought experiment. What would you do to enable that attack? What you would do if you were a government? What you would do is if you would be on side with Bitcoin.
That's super interesting. It has this increasingly bigger crowd that comes in and only cares about number co-op technology. And then there's the hardcore, as we call it, the freedom co-op technology. And I mean, I would argue probably 99% of Bitcoiners, or maybe even like all of them, come in first like because they see number go up and then they learn about Bitcoin. Hopefully most of them actually see the revolution and what's so fundamental about Bitcoin then later on, and then all of a sudden start taking self-custody, running their own nodes and doing actually the hard work, kind of like what it takes to be sovereign on Bitcoin. That's at least my hope.
And that's what people like you are doing with your podcast. That's what we're doing through Ego Death and investing in all of the things that protect this and make it and build functionality on top of this. We think about this as a real revolution where we're building on an honest world, and so it doesn't actually take. If you just think about why it feels like that. Why it feels like most people aren't like us. Most people are a number go up, and many will be a number go up. And you also, some people will make decisions and sell all the Bitcoin and do really well for their families, and that's okay. They won't want spend the time and go to the next step. This is going to be a massively chaotic transition. Because it has to be a massively chaotic transition to move from a system that we've lived in for 3,000 to 5,000 years that's always been exploitative to a cooperative one. Most of our minds can't grapple what that means. But now think about what's happening. Why it feels like what you would say is, especially if you're on Twitter, right? It doesn't feel like that as much on Nostr, but it feels like that on Twitter because the majority of people aren't Bitcoiners yet. The majority of the 8 billion people on this planet have no idea the first stage, the number go up. So they enter through government saying it's okay now. It removed a bottleneck. Now they're not fearful of it. And so they start in that giant funnel way up top, and many of them will move down to where you are, where I am today, and contribute. It doesn't take 8 billion people contributing to this network to keep it decentralized and secure. It only takes a small percentage of those people ensuring that this doesn't break, and the rest will have to follow.
This is actually a question that I have a lot, because we know most people use things and don't understand how they work. Like you drive a car, you know how to drive a car, but most of them don't know how this actually works, or the TCP/IP protocol. I think that's also something we discussed in the first episode with you. How many, if you had to guess, if we have like 100% of people in or on Bitcoin, how many do we actually need that truly understand Bitcoin and the implications of that?
So I put an article on Nostr about a month ago, or maybe a little longer than that ago, and somebody shared it on Twitter as well. And it talked about this from a game theory perspective. And I used the example tied to money. I'll just share the example here. So about 10% of people can't be bought. I've seen the number as low as 2.5% and as high as 20%. I actually I've seen the number more often at 2.5%. So let's just use 2.5%. And when I say can't be bought, what I mean by that is if you design payoff matrices within game theory, and the person cannot get caught, they won't get caught. And the reward, you just keep on increasing the reward. 1 million, 2 million, 10 million, 20 million, and you keep on increasing the reward. most people, 97.5% or 90%, will say, I have to do it for my family, or I have to do it for this. Their internal dialogue will make a reason to be able to cheat. 2.5 to 10% of people will not cheat. What their internal dialogue says, their accountability in themselves won't let them. Right there, and I want to be careful here. I don't want to say better, worse, or anything else. It's just those are the numbers, and they've always been the numbers in humans. And so those ask pretty deep, fundamental questions. Who are you? Not who is everybody else. What would you do in that exact example? Now take money. It's been an ultimate honeypot for all of history, because if you could control money, you control everybody else through cheating money. And because people don't notice it, you don't get caught. So what would the world look like if 97.5% of people wouldn't get caught, and they can cheat money, and they can create all of our history books about what the world looks like? Look exactly like it has through this control system. And what it would also look like is the 2.5% of people would have been killed by the cheaters, right? And who do you now? When you think about the 2.5% of people that are killed by the cheaters, who are they? They're actually probably most of our religious figures. They're probably Gandhi. They're probably Martin Luther King. They're a bunch of people who stand out as different from everybody else, really scarce, right? And we celebrate them even today because we want to be like them. It's talking about it's talking about what humans are reaching for, a higher frequency that they can evolve to, but they don't get there. So we celebrate those same people today, but we go back to the system that always cheats. Now, 2.5% of people in Bitcoin running nodes, running economic nodes, creating value, is way more than enough people to keep this decentralized and secure. Way more than enough people. And so what will the most of the people do that have always just gone with whatever they're going to cheat, because if they don't, somebody else will before them? What will they do in the honest system? They'll be more inclined to be one of the 2.5%. Be more inclined to, and you can see this through Bitcoin's early, like this is only 16 years, but you can see it through its early evolution to today. Every single person who's cheated the network, and by cheated the network, tried to accumulate more through a different coin or done this, would have been better off if they were just an honest participant.
The truth that Bitcoin rewards, and the holding and the perseverance of just not being fancy with your with your stack, and just doing the boring accumulating of Bitcoin, which is really hard for humans to do, apparently, of just sticking on a stack.
So look at Roger Ver. Like charged, like he would have been he'd been wealthier than Michael Saylor. They called him Bitcoin Jesus. He was on the other side of the 2017 trying to centralize Bitcoin, and he talks about it today. And he had to write a book because he's broke, and he's trying to matter again. And he talks about it today, and he's rewriting history. Because imagine having all that and all of that ability, and just side with the honest network instead of trying to consolidate more. Imagine what it would look like what would be going on in his brain when his life looks like it does now, compared to what just being on the honest network would look like. And it would create this derangement syndrome, because and you'd hate the honest chain, just like what's happening. You'd have to tell yourself something that I was the hero trying to save this. You'd have to create a different narrative to be able to kind of live with kind of that massive change in what you did. And over and over again, you see this. You see the FTX. You see, and we'll see just because 90% of that 97%, 97.5% of people will cheat. Why this will be chaotic is you have to expect it.
Something interesting. Do you think there will come again a point in Bitcoin's history, something like a block size war 2.0?
Not just possibility, guaranteed. Guaranteed. There'll be all sorts of chaos. There has to be, and there has to be because the systems are incompatible, and most people, by most 99.9%, are measuring. You've never seen the world that I describe, right? When I keep saying Bitcoin isn't going up, prices are falling against it. That is the free market. And Bitcoin is measuring the first global free market that's ever existed. So all of the others, why you see Trump today and many people are giving that strength more strength, right? Elon Trump better than Biden, Biden and the globalists. And while that might be true kind of on the surface of it, because you want to rip out all of the deep state and everything else, that whole infrastructure apparatus came as a result of a control system printing money. How could it change from that system? It just has to consolidate power to somebody else. Because when Elon rips out a whole bunch of the money, the GDP that is all waste today, you'll tip the world into an economic spiral, a deflationary spiral, because all of those people have jobs and all of those people pay for other businesses, all their private businesses that also carry jobs. And as you do that, you'll see the natural state that was there all along, and you'll tip to a deflationary spiral. And the US will have to print so much money. Why? And what you're seeing right now is you're seeing why they want Bitcoin is because they want to print into Bitcoin. And Bitcoin will go up a lot in that. But that system is an inflationary system. And that system, why they also need their security borders and they need to potentially let go of Europe or Japan and they have to control other countries. In Canada, us, or Greenland, or Panama, they have to have it has to be a control system. That control system has to centralize more and more. It has to, instead of in the world we've lived in the last 20 years, where you've had a control system, but it's felt like it's felt like a nice control system because of where you live, right? Now you're just seeing it for what it is. We are going to impose our military might, or you're going to do this, or you're not going to trade with us. That trade, because all humans do, we trade with each other to achieve more value. That's what the global free market looks like. So if you're going to distort that and stop that from happening through your financial instrument, there's going to be consequences. And those consequences are going to continually accrete, and there is no solve from that system. That inflationary system must be a control system. So that inflationary system has to sometime attack Bitcoin. How I would do it? So I would do exactly what's happening right now. I'd convince a whole bunch of people that I'm on side. I love this technology. It's the best thing ever. You can trust Uncle Sam with it. You can trust us. We're going to do the right thing. You can trust Coinbase with your coins. You could do all of this. And then as more and more people did this and more of the economic nodes, the transmission of this was on top of this, I sure wouldn't make the attack anytime soon. But as that happened and more people were transacting on my system, and many of the hardcore Bitcoiners of today, if they then sold into that, okay, I'm out, I'm free, That I would launch the attack later. That would look like a chain split.
There's so many questions coming up, but the biggest one that I always have is what implications, and I'm not sure if we actually touched it on in the first episode, but what implications Bitcoin in general has on governments, because in my head it has to shrink them dramatically.
You just nailed it, and that's what has to happen. Because so governments, our whole idea of a government today, we are the map and the territory. And I find this fascinating because I think why people have such a hard time. One of the reasons why they visualize the present forward rather than the future. And why they do that is they take one aspect, AI or something, and they keep every other variable the same. And what they can't see is their own changes from the change, and how everything changes from those. So if you said that change from this, the world we live in today is an exploitative control system, and it's a mirror reflection of the world we give our energy to, which has theft at the base layer. So of course it would look like that. Of course the people at the top, the greater and greater control structure, wouldn't have to provide value to you, because they would be sucking the value from you. Because all humans providing value is faster deflation, faster abundance. So you could say one system has to be like this. It has to get worse and worse. And we're measuring that system, thinking that that's how governments should look. It didn't look like that in the early US. Government was way smaller, more free markets, more powerful markets. What created the US was the move from control structures of Europe to open and free markets, where there were more ideas shot, more pucks shot on net, more ideas from entrepreneurs that people took advantage of because they could build their freedom and life in the US. That is what created the US empire that then got captured. And that's what creates all more freedom to humans, faster output because of more ideas, faster abundance. And then those systems always get controlled. So we're measuring today exactly what you said, like this is normal. It's completely not normal in a free market. Normal in a free market is the government gets way smaller. It has to. Because the free market imposes a discipline, and the government has to be in service of you rather than prey on you. And so that state change is so massive. And we're measuring, and so it's interesting, and if you pick up on what you're saying and what this is, because this is a whole bunch of people in Bitcoin, where you opened the conversation, are scared of going to Bitcoin because of the same big government that they're feeding with all of their energy. It's crazy. It's crazy. They're essentially screaming from a jail cell, right? You better not save yourself, because the big guy that we make stronger is going to stop you.
It's a super interesting way. How does then the strategic Bitcoin reserve and countries buying Bitcoin, is that basically an attempt to make their life longer?
So let's argue just from both sides. If you were a government, if you were a municipality, if you were a city, and you had an opportunity to not debase your citizens, and said you could put some money here and you could buy more services for your citizens forever, wouldn't you want to do it? If you were a hardcore Bitcoiner, you would probably want to do that, because if you were elected by your citizens and you really cared about your citizens instead of your own power, you would probably want to help the citizens, because that's what you were elected to do. I'm not saying everybody looks like that, but that would be normal, and so that wouldn't be a bad thing at all, because you could create that value. There are also some people, we have to assume, there are some people that know exactly what I know, exactly what you know, and these two systems are incompatible. And there's some people inside that apparatus that would try to control it. Why? Because 97.5% of people will. Right. So when we're going through this, we can't, we have to look around at our friends, we have to look around at people, and we have to realize everybody is going to make their choices here. That's why it's going to get chaotic, and that it's going to be so confusing, because we're living at the end of a system that is grappling for power, and it's trying to take more and more control under the optics that it's helping you. And that there's an evil villain on the other side that's trying to hurt you. And the optics of that are creating the fear and that are keeping people locked in their jail cell. When they could realize, wait, the door's unlocked. I could just walk over here. Right? I could move to the new system and take all my power back, and nothing can stop me. So that is bound to be. And then inside that, there's going to be a whole bunch of other people that say, oh, on the new system, I can have control. It can be, if I was the US in that, then I could create imperialism 1.0 on gold, 2.0 on the petrodollar system, and 3.0 on Bitcoin. And I could extend the life of an extractive system by going to Bitcoin, and it would work for a while. It would work. It would be the right thing to do. But if the US, and some of those people will try to control it, some of those people, because humans cheat. So the question isn't what they will do. Question is what you will do.
Let's take a break for a moment and appreciate the beauty that Coin Vigilante has made with the Bitcoin watches. Those watches are the most amazing, the most elegant way of showing that you are a true Bitcoiner. And Coin Vigilante just dropped a completely new and amazing Genesis edition of their watch collections. You have the date of the first ever mined Bitcoin block in there, and of course also the block height and which epoch we are currently in. I love the level of detail they put in this masterpiece. Make sure to check out those amazing Coin Vigilante timepieces down in the descriptions. I love those watches so much. And now, if you have Bitcoin, I really do hope that you don't have it on exchange. But if you do have it on exchange, I have two ways for you to deal with that. The first way is you put it on a hardware wallet. That's the entry for you to get into the self-custody game. I recommend BitBox, Bitcoin only edition, for that. It's a super simple and secure way. And if you check out the link in the description, you even get 5% off if you use the code Robin. And the second way is the Bitcoin Way. The Bitcoin Way is your all-in partner in terms of how to get the most out of your sovereignty. They will personalize for you a self-custody setup that is perfect for your individual situation. They will show you how you can secure your own devices. Securing your Bitcoin is not enough. You also have to keep all your devices secure. One topic that is overlooked often is the inheritance plan. What happens with your Bitcoin once you are no longer here? Do you have a plan for that in place already? And last but not least, if you're in the jurisdictions where you don't feel safe, it's better to get a plan B. For all that, head over to thebitcoinway.com/Robin to get a 30-minute free call. And just a quick side note, I will be for the first time ever speaking at the Bitcoin Prague event in June. It will be absolutely legendary, and I'm really looking forward to seeing all of you there. You can get your ticket in the link down in the description of Bitcoin Prague, and very important, use code Robin to get 10% off your ticket. I'm really looking forward to seeing you there. Your own personal choice in what system. And it's actually super interesting, and I think I want to touch on that because just let's make it on my example. Like 5 years ago, I didn't have any Bitcoin. I had no clue about Bitcoin. Then I started talking about Bitcoin, and I started to understand the freedom revolution side of things with Twitter and podcasts and all of that. Then I started a business in Bitcoin. Then I decided to like go all in on that small podcasting business. Then I got Bitcoin companies as sponsors, so I now get paid in Bitcoin. So I have part fiat and part Bitcoin salary. The next step is like, okay, I have now 2 freelancers working for me. One is choosing to get paid in Bitcoin, and I want to offer that. So that circular economy is already coming that, and I'm seeing how actually my bank account is getting less and less important in my life. And I'm like, okay, I have my Bitcoin wallet, I have my setup, and I'm just wondering, like, that transition was really quick. And probably I'm not normal because I'm doing like all my life in Bitcoin, but there are so many more people that do that, and that transition is just fascinating. Of like, taking Bitcoin to medium of exchange and almost like unit of account level, and I'm just fascinated by how quick this goes sometimes.
So, Robin, you should tell that story more often, because replicating that story, I find that probably the number one thing I'm asked is, okay, how do I start? What do I do? All of my energy is in this other system. And I'm stuck. I need the money, and there's no way I can commit the time. And I think what your story just described, Peter McCormick's story is the same. Natalie Brunell's story the same. Preston Pish story the same. Lynn Alden's story the same. Over and over, and these are just some of the educators and other podcasters, other people who have built compelling products on Nostr, or compelling on the entrepreneurial, creating more value on top of Bitcoin. This is happening at a rate that's hard to describe. And when we're feeding back and we're seeing the results of just moving our time, it's because it's happened for me too. Moving my time from the system that is exploitative and was controlling me, and moving to this, I don't pay any attention to the nonsense in the other system. I'm aware it's there. I have empathy for the people who are still stuck in jail, but I'm not. And life gets better and better and better because you're in the honest system, working with those people in the honest system, and it's a mere reflection of where you're spending your time. So now, how do you start? Because what you just described is a perfect example of a process in a free market. A perfect example. One thing's creating scarcity and a whole bunch of pain, and you decided to move out of that system to solve that pain for other people, to help them, because there'd be 7.9 something billion people still stuck in the other system. So that would make podcasting and teaching those people and walking them through, kind of, because it's complicated. It's a state change from system to system, and it takes a while to understand. So people like you, people like that are helping people understand that, are helping people. And why are you getting paid, and why are you able to move this, is because you're providing value in the free market. And we're so early in that value creation. There's tons of opportunities. There's so many staggering opportunities inside the free and open market that's decentralized and secure. And now, I've always been an entrepreneur, so my bias has always been to question structures and how could I provide more value. So it seems easy for me, but and I want, and maybe it's not easy for everyone, but if you understood kind of the structure of the worlds that you're living in, and one is going to get worse, a lot worse, and look back 20 years, look back 30 years, and what's happening is life getting better and better, or is it getting worse? And you could decide which and on the structure, it's going to get way worse in the existing, because it's built on theft, because it's built on control, because it's built on that. You won't be able to find a place safe enough in that system unless you're at the top of that system. And I don't think even at the top of that system, you're going to find yourself safe enough from what's going to happen. which creates all of the value in the other system. So go help. Like when I see what you've done in a very short period of time, I think about, so Natalie Brunel. I met her at a conference where she had to sneak in on a press pass at a Bitcoin conference, one of the early ones. And she couldn't get into one of the parties. And I'm thinking, how am I allowed in the party and she isn't? because they didn't know her. She was early in her journey, and she used that, and she said, I'm going to create a podcast. I'm going to teach people what this is. She moved from old media to creating her own, just like you've done. And look at the value she's both created and delivered to audiences around the world. And look how many people she's helped. And so her business is just a testament to her making a choice. And that's, I see over and over, and my entire network is filled with those people. So when people ask me, how do you do this? And I'm watching all of these people do it. There's abundant opportunity. Start a meetup group. Start meeting people locally who also have shared similar interests. Find what else needs to be built. Find out where people are having pain, understanding on this. Either teach or build something. Use AI to build something on top that provides value to people. You'll find tons of opportunity.
That's I can do 100% agree to that. Is there something still feared in your life that you would like to get rid of?
I think so. Where I am in BC, I can't be 100%, and I don't think. I'm not saying and that's catching myself. It's hard to be 100% Bitcoin in everything. So buy houses, buy groceries. My grocery store doesn't accept Bitcoin yet. And so how can I accelerate that? I can give a nod to businesses that do accept Bitcoin, and I can spend my money there. So I do that. I spend in Bitcoin every day, but I can't spend all in Bitcoin every day. In Ego Death, it's because of the fund dynamics, and this is probably through regulation. I can't accept salary yet in Bitcoin. It's a fiat, and then a lot of those companies then convert the fiat we give to Bitcoin, and then as they get more profitable, they accrete Bitcoin on their balance sheet. So this transition, I think, also takes time. When I said we're the map and territory, we influence the things that we want to win, and that's what I'm doing. I'm influencing the things that I want to win. I'm giving a nod to businesses that take Bitcoin. I would prefer to spend Bitcoin every day, and then I'm also helping in places like, if you said Pierre Polyev in Canada, who have helped understand this process a lot. So he. A lot. Ken Sim is a friend in Vancouver who's just attempting to make Bitcoin or Vancouver on the map as both on their balance sheet and kind of a real Bitcoin city, which helps me spend more in Bitcoin.
How do you look at credit? Because I'm now at the point where I'm like spending Bitcoin, and as I said, I'm also paying a freelancer in Bitcoin, and I don't like to use borrowing against Bitcoin or credit or anything like that. I actually like to use Bitcoin as it is, but sometimes it almost feels foolish not to use credit and the fiat games on a high degree to maximize in the end of your Bitcoin stack. And I mean, there are multiple that do that. Companies, Strategy is one famous example, but also individuals that do that. But credit is also a fiat thing, or is that something that also could be on Bitcoin?
So it's more of a fiat. The system is a credit-based system. So a credit-based system can't allow deflation, because the deflation that deflationary spiral would collapse the credit-based system. So when people think about credit today, I think they conflate those two things. So if the system is a credit-based system, then everything has to be credit. It has to be more and more credit, and you have to increase the amount of credit or debt, or the whole thing collapses. And that's where we are in the system problem today. So then individually, and how would that system operate? So how would the existing system operate? It would mean that inflation is wage deflation, so your wages are going down. But the other side of that is if you had debt, it's also going down because the inflation makes the debt cheaper over time. And that has to, so taking massive bets, loans against that, that's why houses have created so much value, because they've become, not value, instead of being a utility value, they're a hold, they've become a money, and you have to hold your wealth and money because you can't hold your money and money, your wealth and money. So you take on more debt. And if you have massive amounts of debt, if you're the backbone of the system, and the government will always press a button to be able to make you resolve your problem, like in JP Morgan or any bank, any financial institution then if you create this massive backed on the system and you own all of these assets, and they'll always press a button to inject more liquidity, you extract everything from everybody else. So that's what that system looks like. And then what you're talking about here is, in the other system, deflation is natural, because the natural state of the free market is deflation. And as more people enter that, as we do more with AI, as we do more with robotics, you'll have faster and faster deflation. That means any debt, if you're using the mental model you used to use, that debt will get cheaper over time because of inflation. In the new model, that debt will get more expensive over time. And somebody is going to pay, right? If you lent it out, your Bitcoin, and they couldn't pay, right? You're going to have to either take their business, take their assets, take their, and so many people are going to get confused by this because it's a really complicated topic, measuring that system change from the system you're measuring from, because it's exactly opposite. Credit cannot look like it does in the new system. The way it does, it eviscerates most of the credit. I'm not saying credit isn't here. It's just way smaller, because as a user of credit, you have to decide, can I pay this back in something where prices are falling faster and faster and faster, making that debt more expensive. Now, if you're there's all sorts of tricks, and MicroStrategy is one of them, and I think they're going to do a good job of using the existing system as an attack against the new. But be very careful if you're levering your Bitcoin. Be very, very, or if you're trusting somebody else to lever your Bitcoin, be very, very careful, because this is going to wreck a lot of people.
I try to stay in Bitcoin and just as a savings technology, and don't do with credits. Thinks it's a safe and great strategy.
Think about what you just said. So you have a 45% IRR for the last 15 years. So and non-counterparty risk. So holding in self-custody. If you just hold for any length of time, you have a 45% IRR. If you're buying a house, you have maybe 6 or 8%. If you're any other, so you cannot get a compounded. The only thing in the world that is that rate of return is Bitcoin. And it's non-counterparty risk. It has zero counterparty risk to the existing system. And so what are people doing? Which seems crazy. I'm trying to increase my IRR from 45% to take risk inside the other system that has all of the risk. So how you're thinking about it as savings technology is, I think, the best thing you could teach. The risk-free rate of the world today is 45%. If I don't think I can beat that, right, I wouldn't invest. In fact, we use this calculation at EgoDev. Because the only way I think I can beat that is either what MicroStrategy is doing, lever this and play that game through shorts, longs, and hedge out my risk, or build companies that provide value in the free market and accumulate Bitcoin on their balance sheet by doing so, and then you're having essentially venture returns on top of a venture asset.
That's super interesting, because I look at that and like, why would I take any additional risk as long as my Satoshi number goes up every month or every quarter or every year? That's the best I can do.
Totally.
I want to go back one more time to the medium of exchange side of things. Do you think medium of exchange and unit of account is required for the Bitcoin story and for the store of value story? Because I ask that intentionally because I make community polls a lot on my YouTube channel, and I see a lot of people still struggling with using Bitcoin outside of just as a savings technology.
So if Bitcoin isn't a medium of exchange, it will fail as a store of value. So if you are not using as a medium of exchange, then you're relying on somebody else or a lot of other people to use it as a store of value to be able to protect your wealth. And again, it comes back to you. What are you making the decision? Maybe you get away with it because a whole bunch of people already made the same call that you are, Robin, that I am, and using it as a medium of exchange. Maybe you get away with it, and that's just okay. But you have to understand, because the systems are different, right? We've never lived in a global free market where you could trade with people all over without an intermediary. And the output of that trade was deflation. And think about why that output of that trade has to be deflation. You are part of the network. I'm not saying Bitcoin here. I'm saying you're part of any trade. You're part of the fabric. And you only choose things that give you more value. And all entrepreneurs have to compete more with and provide more value. And they have to compete with what was there before. Otherwise, you won't use them. So that global trade has to be deflation. So you're a node in that. Now, if you take your power and you give your power away to somebody else and say, I'm just this network, and this other one is inflationary, and it stops that from happening, then that system has to stop Bitcoin at some point. And if all of your trade is in that system and you are not self-custodying, not running an economic node and all of these trade, then that system will stop Bitcoin in time, because not enough trade, not enough. So the little tiny fees from Lightning and such that then move down to the miners. What if all of those fees are in the centralized system? What will the miners choose? So you are an active participant in this. So when people, the simplest thing you could just repeat, if Bitcoin fails as a medium of exchange, it fails as a store of value, period. It will be captured. Say it over and over and over again for anybody who's not listening. And eventually, hopefully, enough people will get it. And why, just like in Bitcoin running a node, they should contribute, or they ought to contribute to the network that's also providing them their store of value.
It makes a lot of sense, and once you are in that deep, you're like, oh, like it's almost almost a no brainer.
This is why, specifically, if you think about what Roy is doing at Breeze, what Obi is doing at Fedi, what Cashew as well. But if you look at all of these technologies that allow more payments in a way that doesn't centralize. You people really need to understand the tech to understand how it doesn't centralize. But if it use Breeze open source and how the routing nodes are done and how it uses Lightning or Liquid or eventually Arc, it becomes a layer that you can just plug in and optimize your business for payments. And by doing that, you contribute to the nodes you contribute to the network that's decentralizing. And there's a bunch of other companies that will centralize. Like if you said, like, I'm not going to name them here, but but some of the big tech companies will try to centralize. Some of the big Bitcoin companies will try to centralize, and you could. So for people who understand this deeper and people who are making decisions on which tech stack to use, it would be I think it's an important part of the criteria in them thinking through the decisions of the tech stack they're using to accept payments, and people using payments similar.
I have one more topic before we come to the end routine today, and it's an interesting, hopefully an interesting one. You give a lot of calmness and confidence to a lot of people, and we were both together also on the BTC sessions live stream with Ben and Ken, as you mentioned, the mayor was also there, and Ben said something interesting. Always when he has doubts, he calls you, and gets a lot of calmness also from you. Do you have sometimes doubts around your theory? And second one is like, what or how did you get so confident, or what makes you so convinced of it?
A lot of work, a lot of work, and then to be able to essentially try to kill this. So some of the examples I'm using are work that I've done for a lot of. How I look at this is the system has to be chaotic to transition. It must be, because we've never lived in this system. Nobody has a mental framework for what I'm talking about. And so what I'm talking about is true, right? We know that the natural state of the free market is deflation. We know that productivity should accelerate. We know that means we should be living in abundance. All of those things are true. They're just not from the existing system. Then I go to okay, if we've never lived in this system, but many bright lights throughout time, Nikola Tesla, Henry Ford, Buckminster Fuller, many others talked about how this would work, but couldn't get there from the technology that we used to have, and we always fell back into our worst selves. Then what would make me believe that this time could be different? So my bar on this time is different is probably way higher than most people's bar, and it forces me to attack every one of these problems, because the problem isn't everyone else. The problem is us. The problem isn't, everybody says those people, and they're giving their strength away. And there is no they, it's just we. So we make choices. And I've already made, I guess what makes me confident in this, I've made my choice. I know what system I'm going to, and I don't begrudge other people for their choices. I don't need to get mad at it. It just is. It's going to be chaotic and confusing. It just is, right? But I've made my choice, and nobody can take my choice from me. That's what gives me confidence. And every day, my choice feeds back to me in feeling like it's the right choice. And hopefully, a whole bunch of other people, you, all of the other people you know who have made the similar choice, are making the similar choice because they know what the choice means. And so now, once you understand that, you don't have to be mad at other people. Like I think, I really honestly, the humility in I think about myself 10 years ago or 9 years ago, before I knew that all of this, and I think about the choices I made then. And if somebody told me what I'm saying now, I probably have a hard time seeing it from who that person was at that time too. So my mind has changed through this, and my mind is deep, and then my life has gotten. It's not my life was great before, but what I see and how much that's reflecting back, and how much fun I'm having, and what it looks like in my life as it hopefully impacts other people positively too, and then their lives positively too, and their families' lives. It makes me feel like I'm on the right path. So why is it? I don't think there's anything that can shake that. Like, I just don't think, like, because I'm ready for all the chaos. I'm ready for everything else that happens. I know it's part of it. But that chaos can't drag me back into it. It can attack me, but only I control my own mind. I control what I give energy to.
I love that. And I usually ask two end-routine questions. The one that comes from the previous guest, and the one comes from what we can learn from you besides Bitcoin. And I think this was already a good answer to the last one, what we can learn from you besides Bitcoin. Do you want to add in anything here?
No. I feel like for some people, and I'm sorry, it feels like for me, it feels like I say the same thing over and over again. But I guess you almost have to in a world that's the 8 billion people that don't misunderstand what's happening.
Absolutely. We have the last question of today from the previous guest. So the previous guest asked a question for the next guest without knowing who the next guest is. And your question is, what do you think is your most valuable contribution to Bitcoin?
I would say the work I do now with helping entrepreneurs achieve their dreams in creating value on top of this protocol, or I'd hope that's so. A lot of the things that we will see develop and use every day came out of ideas that were in ideas and brains that then had lots of risk and challenges that then were funded and created, not just funded, but kind of working shoulder to shoulder with entrepreneurs who are trying to bring their the value to society.
Interesting. I think that's really, really great. One asked all my guests where they can find you. It's usually in Twitter, but I think with you, it's now primarily already Nostr, right?
Yeah, I'm only. I haven't been on Twitter in almost a year, actually over a year. So I have my account. I don't check it very often. I have my account for spaces and such, but most of my time is on Nostr.
Really cool. Thank you so much, Jeff, for being on the show. Also, thank you so much for everyone that is watching and listening, for joining us today. As always, I'll be back tomorrow with another episode. Bye-bye.